Hello, it's Mary Nasi with IMT Realty, and today I'm here with Michael Mish from Eastern Connecticut Savings Bank. You are the Assistant Vice President of Residential Lending.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about buying and selling real estate during the COVID market and whether it's safe.
Yes.
So why don't you start with the mortgage industry and what they're doing to help people stay safe during the process?
Thank you. So prior to all of the pandemic with COVID and everything, the mortgage business had already started to kind of shift to what would be considered as a digital mortgage experience. Applying online, signing documents online, and basically making for a paperless mortgage process. That was kind of already, many companies started it several years ago.
Right.
But with COVID and everything, it kind of pushed everything to the forefront. The last piece of the puzzle that really wasn't prevalent prior to COVID was the virtual or e-closing.
Right.
Many banks, mortgage lenders, brokers were doing some variation from the application process up until the closing with the digital mortgage. So that was already something that was in process. When COVID hit, a lot of attorneys and other technology companies that kind of service the mortgage industry, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because they had to find a solution immediately on how to deal with the closing process. So that was the last piece of the puzzle that has kind of come to fruition during all this. A lot of attorneys are doing e-closings, virtual closings, digital notaries. There's still some attorneys that are not equipped or not willing to do that. But in that situation, what they generally do is they'll do a closing outside of their office. I know people that have sat in their cars while the attorneys, watch them sign documents, and then the attorneys notarized it. So those are kind of the basic steps that banks, mortgage lenders, attorneys, and everybody has used to make it safe for people.
And same with the mortgage process.
Yeah, and this is actually now because we were kind of forced into it because of COVID. Now all these technology and financial services companies have kind of taken it and said, well, now if you're not offering that digital experience or the ability to e-sign documents and apply online, you're kind of a tier below where everybody else is. So now let's put a lot of technology in. So you're really going to see technology companies developing more things for the consumer to make it an easier process. The one that most people probably think of right off the bat because they have great advertising is the Quick and Rocket mortgage.
Right.
But what everybody's trying to do is kind of find a happy medium between making it easy for people, but also making the mortgage process or the pre-approval process or whatever part of the process you're in, making it, legitimate. Because, I'm sure you've seen it before where, what the pre-approval that the Rocket mortgage might give you and what is actually, available to that person don't always match up. So that's kind of where, the technology and the innovation is kind of, coming to the forefront and making it easier for people right now.
That's great. I think even the real estate industry, as far as real estate sales, and leasing go, if you were not technology savvy or at least inclined to use technology, COVID's definitely changed that. It's made it more of a requirement to be able to use e-signatures. I think it's made our jobs easier. It's made contracts cleaner, where everything's done electronically, filled out ahead of time. So more cross outs and, faxing is almost obsolete. Occasionally people still use it, but it's pretty much obsolete. And some of the things that we've done to make people feel comfortable in the real estate industry is we're still doing in-person showings. I've been doing in-person showings through most of COVID. But once things started to really open back up in May, we're still doing virtual showings if people request them. We make sure that we get virtual tours done for all of the listings. But most people still want to go into a home. They're
Right.
spending, it's probably one of the biggest purchases of most people's lives. I don't know if I would be as comfortable not, I did buy a house once without seeing it, but I was many states away and very pregnant at the time. And I bought it through a video that my brother took.
Yeah.
I ended up selling it 2 years later because it wasn't exactly what I would have picked out, but worked out at the time. But anyhow, so what we're doing is we're not taking the whole family through on showings, whereas, people would bring their kids, maybe their parents. We're trying to limit it to just the buyer or the buyer and his, their spouse or significant other. We try to encourage them to not bring the kids into the showing. And we ask that the sellers turn all the lights on themselves throughout the house and open all the doors, including closet doors, basement doors, bedroom doors, so that there's less things for outside individuals to touch. It keeps them safer. And we leave those on and the doors open when we leave, and then the homeowners would come back and take care of shutting that stuff down. We obviously wear masks and and gloves. And I think that gives the buyers a sense of peace that they're, being careful, as well as, to list your house during COVID had to be, a little concerning with the number of people coming through. And then even on the inspection side, so once a contract is signed, the inspection world has changed. A lot of home inspectors are actually requiring that the property be vacant. Some of them are allowing the buyers to be present, not president. But they've definitely taken steps to limit the number of people that are attending the inspection, and most of the inspectors that I've worked with are then reviewing it with the potential buyers, the reports virtually, and going through it with them. And it's even trickled down to the appraisals. During the beginning of COVID, everything kind of stopped as far as inside interior appraisals. But that's really changed. That's still, I'm finding that it's not consistent, at least in my opinion. Some of them are still doing desktop appraisals, some of them are doing drive-bys, and some are doing interior. And even with the interior, they do ask that, most of them ask that the property be vacant, where the homeowner not be home and all the lights and everything turned on. How does the bank decide whether they're doing interior desktop or?
So that actually is something that, regardless of if you're a bank, a mortgage lender, or whoever you go through, is fairly consistent, because 95% of all mortgages either end up at Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, whether that's who you do your loan was initially with, and it gets sold off. A lot of times people don't realize if maybe they're with a larger bank that actually services it, but it still ends up at Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, the two large government-sponsored entities. And the underwriting systems that everybody uses, again, whether it's at Eastern or if you're at a large bank or a large mortgage lender or broker, we're all running the same underwriting system. So it's desktop underwriter, or it's loan prospector for Fannie or Freddie. When you put the information for an application and run that through, that's where it tells you if you get the appraisal waiver. And from there, what type of appraisal waiver, like before during COVID, if you were getting a desktop, if they were saying, if you need a full appraisal, we'll accept it with, an exterior only. I had some that were kind of in transition during the period where, when I originally ran them, there was an appraisal waiver. And then through the process, I don't know if it was something that was, at Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or internally, or if it changed something in the file. But sometimes you can see where you might get one up front, and then towards the process or throughout the process, it might change, depending on how their guidelines have changed. So that's the only thing that I've seen with it. More so on refinances, are you getting appraisal waivers if you have a larger amount of equity, more money,
Right.
or if you're buying and you're putting a large amount down.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably see it a lot too nowadays with interest rates, with PMI being so cheap. Most people don't want to put a lot of money down. They try to put the minimum if possible.
I agree.
Yeah.
So do you think a lot of these changes are going to stay after COVID eventually, goes away?
On the mortgage side, yeah, I think it will definitely be something that, especially the virtual, the e-closings, the virtual notaries, we're a little bit behind the times in Connecticut compared to other states.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's something that as the technology grows greater, when I was with, before I came to Eastern and I was with a large national lender, they used to say all the time that within the next 5 to 10 years, your closings, will
They're gonna be
be,
digital.
a thumbprint and an eye scan
Oh, wow.
and not really signing, because those are biometrics that you can copy somebody's signature. You can't copy their eye and their thumbprint. So
Well, then they have the whole problem where a lot of younger people don't even have a signature.
right, exactly, yeah. I'm even seeing it now more where the technology is going from computer-based technology to everything that we're doing in the business is transitioning to a smartphone. If you have an app or something that you're working on and you can pull it up on a desktop, it's different if you have to pull that same document up on a phone.
Absolutely.
And as crazy as it sounds, I could see sometime in the next 10 to 15 years where home computers are kind of obsolete because we do everything on our phones. So
I
now
think they are becoming more obsolete.
When people don't have access working from home to a computer where they can print a document. So everything, DocuSign and that type of stuff is making the process simpler, easier. And I think it's only going to continue on from here.
So I think they've put both industries have put a lot of time and effort into making people as comfortable as possible. I truly believe it is safe to buy and sell during COVID. I think everybody has to decide for themselves what their comfort level is, whether they can go into a property or do it virtually, or so on and so forth. But I think that's an individual decision. But we have the tools in place to pretty much accommodate the different scenarios and different comfort levels of people in general.
Right. One of the things that I tell people about technology, if they're a little skittish about it, or why is it becoming more and more popular, other than obviously we're becoming a technology-based society more so, but it actually is beneficial to the mortgage process, where you hear people say, oh, it's such a hard process, and why do they ask for so much paperwork and this and that. They do ask for a lot. The more technology comes along, the process will essentially become simpler with technology, because as things like, e-signatures and different verifications, the whole mortgage process is really designed to try to limit fraud, because fraud is how a bank or a mortgage lender can lose money. So if you can limit the fraud because of technology, then, if we know you are who you say you are, and we don't have to worry about, we can verify documents, bank statements, pay stubs, and all that stuff virtually directly from your employer, or however that's done through the IRS and things like that. Less fraud means for an easier process for people. So a lot of the technology that's come out is really to make the, you hear people say like the customer experience. But it kind of, from my side of it, makes it more enjoyable, because then it's, more meeting with the customer, explaining the process so they understand it. And the not fun stuff like the paperwork.
It's both streamlined.
Streamlined, exactly. It's a good way to put it, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Mike, and we will definitely be talking soon about our next topic.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.